Public Television.
You're watching Georgia Public Television, where you can help keep it quiet on the set.
Did Japanese Prime Minister Nakasone tell the truth when he alleged that blacks, Puerto Ricans, and Mexicans lowered the intelligence level of the United States, or did his apology amount to an admission of racism? I'm Tony Brown. When we come back, the IQ question, Black-Japanese relations.
Tony Brown's Journal is brought to you by Pepsi-Cola Company and your local Pepsi bottlers.
My question is, when the Prime Minister made the remark which insulted all black people throughout the world, was he really concerned when he apologized, or was it just a political ploy?
What do you think of that, Mr. Touche Miyazaki?
My name is Toshi Miyazaki.
Thank you.
I have no idea. Can't answer that.
You have no idea why he apologized?
Yes.
You are the administrator of the Japanese American Association.
Yes, I am, but I have
heard
no idea, his intentions or his...
What you do understand what an apology is?
Yes, he apologized, and that I feel, well, I have no idea whether,
I think in all honesty, to your question, that question has to be asked him, and I felt there should be a delegation, because I think for you to sit there and try to assume that it was more than what you could assume, I think the only answer he can give you is he have no idea. We would have to go to him, and we black folks, thank God, are sophisticated enough now to get a delegation and go over there and say, first, we want you to eat some kidlings and your chop suey. And second, we want to ask you the same question you asked. And I think he's the only one that qualifies to ask that, or someone that works directly with him that could send a telex and say, and I think one of the things, Tony, you should bring him over here. And he should sit right, no, seriously, he should sit right there. That's it.
Ms. Geraldine Daniels is a New York Assemblywoman and the first public elected official who demanded an apology from Mr. Nakasone. What do you think of that, Ms. Daniels?
Well, I think that as I responded, I just had to issue the statement that I did when he made that remark. And while I agree with Dick Gregory that Nakasone is the only one who could really answer that question, I felt that there had to be some type of reciprocity, or there should be some type of, that he should apologize as he did, and I accepted the apology unconditionally, feeling that he should, the Japanese government should put some dollars into the communities across black America to show. I mean, there is no quid pro quo in my estimation. If you are a country and you are getting all of the money from Americans and you're not giving any back in return, I think that there's something to be said about that, especially when you're supposed to be a partner, an ally, and a democracy.
Apart from the money, what offended you? What moved you to write him? Money didn't move you to write him.
No, it did not. Racism moved me to write him, because I felt that it was a barbaric, as I said, an unintelligent remark. And I feel it was based on racism. And I don't feel that Nakasone is cognizant of the depth of racism that exists in our country, where black Americans and Puerto Rican Americans or Hispanic Americans and Mexican Americans are concerned. I don't think that he's cognizant of that. He doesn't know that they're a monoracial society and we're a multiracial society. And they're not able to get along with other people. We are, because we had to.
There is another person who is a Japanese American who understood what Mr. Nakasone said, and she doesn't agree with him, and I think she has the same degree of indignation that you have. And if I can get her name correct, she is Ms. Yuri Kuchiyama. Is that correct, Ms. Kuchiyama? What was your reaction to his remarks?
Well, I was aghast. Not surprised, though, knowing that Japan's history has not been good as far as human rights, but just aghast and felt as insulted as the black community in which I live. And I've lived in Harlem 26 years and have had a wonderful life there. And so I felt it hit me as hard. I do not think he is even aware of how contemptuous and insensitive that statement was and the ramifications that it would make. So even if there was an apology, I don't think he's really aware of the damage that was done. And I think it's good that people like Geraldine Daniels and the Black Caucus has responded immediately.
Sir, did anything about his remarks seem unusual to you?
Well, I felt that I think he sort of put him on the side of, shall we say, white Anglo-Saxon, Protestant Americans. Actually, the Japanese are not with the majority in that respect, you know, and they faced the same kind of problem that the black and the Puerto Ricans and the Mexicans have faced. And I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, on the wrong side of the track, another side of the track, where there were very few blacks, but there were Greeks. It was called a Greek town. There were Mexicans, but it was on the wrong side of the track. And many of the Japanese who came to America was in the same boat as all the rest of, you know, minority Americans. And in an international sense too, I don't think Japanese are necessarily just recently they've been on the wrong side of the track, so to speak, for many years too.
Wrong side of the track in what respect? You mean people in Japan?
Yes, the Japanese themselves were not regarded as belonging to the...
In America?
Yes, in America, even in the world national scene, they were not very important at one time, and they've had a lot of problems. And I think Mr. Nakasone made a mistake. He has apologized, but I think when you put everything into perspective, where he's always with the so-called privileged people, I think it's not particularly so. I'm just saying that as a person, not as a representative in any organization.
Tony, I'd like to make a statement on this. I think it's very important for us as Asian Americans in this country to denounce that kind of a statement. I think when the statement came out, Yuri and myself, we went to the Japanese consulate and confronted them and denounced the statement and asked for an apology. It's important for the American people to make the distinction. The Japanese government and the Japanese American people in this country and even the Japanese people in Japan are not the same. Nakasone, we could call him the Reagan of the Far East, okay? Reagan wanted him to begin to militarize again. I think let's not be fooled about that. He wanted them to take more control in Asia. And the way to do that is to whip up this racist attitude. And just before Nakasone made that statement, a couple of weeks ago, he insulted the Chinese, he insulted the Koreans. Koreans who live in Japan are treated as second-class citizens. When Japan invaded China and Korea, they have to whip up that chauvinist sentiment in the country in order to go invade another country. So the whole thing, that superiority thing is there. But the whole thing here, we have to make the distinction that as people living in this country, we got to denounce that. And also, we got to denounce our own government. What Reagan is doing in terms of, if Nakasone wants to speak about the educational system, he has to know that Reagan is putting more money in building bombs and building schools. And he has to find out more about it. I think one question I want to raise to the gentleman is that there's got to be more in terms of interrelation building, cross-cultural things. What I want to ask him as Japanese businessmen, one thing is like really to invest some business, create some jobs in the minority community, and that can help build relations. I want to see if you can help push that in terms of some of the Japanese businessmen to begin to do that, to begin to create some jobs in the black community, in the Hispanic community, and to begin to build that working relationship.
From very little that I know, the Japanese are investing lots of money in the United States, building automobile plants, buying real estate, getting into all kinds of business ventures, and I'm sure that some of that business endeavors are helping the minorities in America, just as well as helping other people in America.
It is estimated that black Americans consume about $7 billion a year of Japanese-made imported goods. Ms. Daniels, what do you think about what black America is getting back for $7 billion it sends to Japan?
I don't think they're getting back anything. I mean, I won't say anything, just zero, but they certainly are not getting back their fair share. And that's what I said to the other question earlier, aforementioned, so to speak. Even some of the American-made goods, there are a lot of components that are Japanese, and we are not getting back what we should get back as black Americans, and that is the whole hue and cry by the other community, and this is why I reacted as I did, because I think that this is abominable for us not to be getting back our fair share or a decent share of that money for what we're spending.
I think the first question asked was Nakasaki's remark right as far as related to the intelligence level of black Americans. I'll speak as a black American. No, he was incorrect. I think that's the first thing that has to be answered. Certainly, his remarks were racist. There's no doubt that they were racist. I have an opportunity to go back and forth to Japan on business. In fact, I will very shortly go back to Japan. I don't find his remarks to be representative of the business people, nor the street people in Japan. But I think that he owes America, not just black Americans, he owes all America an answer, as were his remarks personal, or did they represent what the Japanese government represents? And until it's answered, the whole Japanese government owes us an apology. And I think that there should be some stranglehold put on the exchange of dollars by government, Reaganism or whatever, until such time as it's answered. Because when we see all the radios being played up and down the streets throughout America that are comprised of 100% of Japanese parts, just that alone represents billions of dollars that are being spent in the United States every year, and they should be called to task and answered for. No question about that.
I think before we leave, the IQ question is something we should clarify, too. The IQ exam was designed and created in France in 1905 to measure the transmission of French culture to young French people, not to test intelligence. No instrument has ever been designed that can measure inborn native intelligence. In 1917, the immigrants from Europe, the Jews, the Slovaks, the Greeks, the Italians, IQ was around 85, same place blacks are now. The man named Brigham, the creator of the college-bound SAT scores, asked that these people be put out of the country and laws be passed so the intelligence of America would not be lowered. They confused, in 1917, intelligence with IQ, and Mr. Nakasone's remark in 1986 has done the same thing. The fact that black Americans make 12 points less than the average white on IQ scores does not mean blacks are less intelligent. It means that they're less proficient with a middle-class white Anglo-Saxon northeastern instrument. But it does not measure native intelligence, because the group that made the lowest scores, the white group in 1917, now make the highest scores in 1986. So I think we have to get straight when we talk about intelligence or IQ scores.
I don't think Mr. Nakasone's statement was an accident, and I want to agree with the Asian woman sitting in the front. On the same day that they reported his statement, the New York Times had the results of a survey that was taken among some white and black and Hispanic children, measuring things like
their ability to negotiate such things as balancing a checkbook, ordering from a menu in a restaurant, looking up a name in a telephone book. Of course, the blacks and Hispanics scored very low. But what's very interesting about that study is the whites didn't do that well. So I think periodically we see these things reoccurring, and they're not done in a vacuum. They're done for a purpose. And the purpose is to keep us all in that little particular niche that they have defined for us.
Well, based on who makes what on IQ scores, Japanese in Japan make the highest IQ scores of anybody in the world. Their IQs are 10 points higher than the average white American. But I don't think the average white American would admit being inferior because they make 10 points less than the average Japanese.
Tony, I think that Black America needs to send Mr. Nakasone a message. You can tell him that we've been speaking Japanese perhaps a little too long. Toyota, Hitachi, Panasonic. And maybe we ought to stop speaking Japanese and show him that our economic clout can bring him back to realism, that this is today's world, and that blacks are not ignorant perhaps among ourselves because we continue to purchase these items, and we need to stop.
Mr. Brown, I couldn't agree with you more. On the question of education, Japanese make the highest scores on those IQ exams, but they also spend 240 mandated days in school. We here in America only spend 180 days in school. So there is no mystique to them making that kind of high IQ scores, because as you said before, and I can't remember all of the particulars, but nevertheless, the ethnic group that used to make the lowest scores today make the highest scores in our country, and that happens to be Jewish people.
In Japan, Ms. Daniels, children have to take IQ tests to get in kindergarten. They take tests all of their lives. Number two, they are a homogeneous society. Therefore, the norm is not reduced by various cultural and ethnic groups. Number three, the Japanese are very studious, hard-working, earnest people with very good character. All of those things add up to high IQ scores. But I don't think anyone would say it adds up to them being superior to all people from all other parts of the world.
That's what Nakasone would like to believe, that they're a superior group of people and that every other group of people are inferior. And that's where the racism comes in at. Because that's my opinion. That's my candid belief, that that's what he thinks. I mean, and when you read the paper, you read whether it's the Time article, any article that you read about this, he was made to apologize, Mr. Brown. You and I know that. I'm a politician. We know that he was made to apologize. Whether I accept it, that's one thing, but that doesn't say that I just believe that he just made it, as a young lady said, that it was an error. He knew what he was saying. And how could he do that when he just had fired one of his subordinates, so to speak, as he would call him, not too long ago for making a similar remark? I mean, let's look at it.
Sure.
I think there's a misunderstanding about the Japanese IQ being high, in the sense that when they go to grammar school and high school and enter college, the pressure is so hard on them that they really study. And after they get in there, they relax, and many students in college, especially toward the senior year and graduate year, their level come way down, so the American level shoots up and Japanese level go down. So you can't just go by the.
No, sir. We have a bell where we measure IQ. Most people are in the middle. The minority is on the low end, and the minority on the high end. That's what a norm is, and based on this norm, and you're the only person. I don't know if you're saying Japanese IQ scores are not the highest.
IQ, but what achievement in college, they start coming down in level.
That might be
because
true.
They've been under so much stress during their younger years.
Right.
I just wanted to respond to the young lady up front who mentioned that
you know, as I think we see a bigger problem here, and I think the tone has been set by this administration, the Reagan administration in this country. And I think that when our government can sit back and it kind of lets me know the kind of relationship that they have with other foreign powers. Okay, and I think that if the message comes out of the back room, so to speak, that we have this problem or that, you know, we can't deal with it, or in all the negative aspects of our multicultural and racial society, that I think that if they get that message, they're going to bring it back, of course, in front of our television cameras, and we're going to get it. I think that we need to let our president know, the president of this country, let our congressmen know, and our assemblymen know that, yes, we're citizens and we do not appreciate the kind of message that's being sent, not only to the Prime Minister of Japan, but also to other countries, too. How do they view the ethnic representatives or population in this country? We see people from all countries, okay? And I don't think that we can begin to separate people and say that this is the cause or because of these people that we have existing problems.
I think it's something also important to keep in mind, Ms. Daniels, back to your point, and that is every district in Japan, every school district receives the exact same amount of money. In the United States, if you live in a poor neighborhood, your school district obviously doesn't get as much funds as a very wealthy neighborhood. So there tends to be a more equality in terms of what you learn in school.
I think one of the things that along with talking about the IQ and that stress, there's no country on this planet that has the amount of suicide among grade school and high school students as they have in Japan. Yes. I mean, it is a vicious pressure. And there are fights like we talk about, juvenile gang wars. There's just vicious fights that go on in those schools over that whole kind of system that they have. So I think when you sit and you look at the beauty that have come out of this, and I think the whole human family should notice that we did not take Japanese people to task about that statement. We took the Prime Minister. That's right. And I think when black people make statements that alienate folks, all of us get calls from everybody wanting to know what we think about it. And I wish they would take a lesson from us. We have not called Japanese down the street or the Japanese just because they're Japanese. We have held ours to the Prime Minister. And Minister Falcon's a good example. I mean, blacks was called, and every other black you saw was asked, what do you think about his thing? Well, ask him. How do I know?
That's an excellent statement.
Certainly black Americans should be offended by remarks made by members of other governments, and it's certainly something that we deserve an apology. But ultimately, black Americans really need to be cognizant of the fact that we have to achieve in many areas in this country and not react to what other people say. I mean, that's a peripheral issue. The issue is, are we not achieving intellectually and academically at the level we should be? Do we have the kind of economic control over our state that we need to have? And we really shouldn't be depending on other nations to give us aid and assistance in areas that we really have the power and control to do that ourselves. So the fact that these things occur, we certainly should take a strong united stand and to criticize those remarks. But ultimately, we do need to take control of our lives in these areas and not constantly react to what other people think or say about us. You see what I mean? That's not the problem. And so that's what we really need to focus on.
Back to the facts, I think it's also important to remember that some of the highest IQ scores ever made were made by blacks, and culture can be learned, as many black people who make high IQ scores demonstrate. They're not demonstrating they're intelligent, they're demonstrating that they can learn another culture.
And that was the point I was going to...
Now, how did I know that?
Along the lines of achievement. Let's talk about the Nobel Prize prizes won by blacks, and the contributions made by blacks in the areas of blood transfusion and open heart surgery. We have made major contributions to this nation. We have taken what they've given us. We are the people who have been spat upon and spat upon, but we have come out ahead. We've gathered. I think in your statement, I read your Assemblyman's statement, we have 6 black Nobel Prize winners. How many do the Japanese have? And we are a minority among a minority.
That's right.
But we have achieved.
Of course, we all know we have more basketball players than they do.
I just say something on that point. I think that's really fantastic, because when you think that we're the minority, we're not the majority group, and if we have 6 against the 10 of a whole country, that shows how great that we are doing. Because we are not, we've been enslaved. We are not enslavers, so to speak. And this is what another thing that I said in my statement. And the Japanese people have been enslaved, as you mentioned, maybe somebody might have mentioned it before, in Korea and Manchuria.
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind, and all of us obviously do, because we're not blaming the Japanese people. We're talking about the Prime Minister's statement, and that is different cultural groups do certain things better than other cultural groups. No cultural group does everything better, so maybe the Japanese are indigenously better at taking IQ scores. And maybe we're better at winning Nobel Prizes or playing basketball.
I'd like to get back to that statement that the gentleman back there made, if I may, Mr. Brown. And I agree with that. We have close to about 200 people in here or so, 200 very intelligent persons that's interested in a remark made by a prime minister of another country. And I think it's time for all of us to get up our bootstraps and really fight for some of the things that we want ourselves, and as he said, not react, but to act in a very positive fashion. And I think that if we do that, black Americans would be better off, and we wouldn't have to be begging or asking anyone else to do anything else. So we need to do some of these things for ourselves. I think about self-respect, pride, and dignity at all times. Just wanted to make that statement.
I'm sorry, we're out of time, and on that statement, we all have to go home and check our IQs. Thank you very much.
Where can you find the kind of television that helps you understand the issues that shape your life? From a nightly news analysis to business reports, and from economic to political affairs at home, discover the smart place to be, Georgia Public Television.
Tony Brown Productions produces this program and is solely responsible for its content. Tony Brown's Journal is brought to you by Pepsi-Cola Company and your local Pepsi bottlers.
Hello, I'm Bob Keeshan. As a viewer of public TV, I think there must be a way to support TV worth watching here in Georgia than with annoying pledge breaks. This fall, GPTV and I will have a different approach. Watch GPTV and your mailbox for details. You'll love it.
Embark on an unprecedented journey with the Africans as host Ali Mazrui details Africa's long search for political stability. Nigeria has had 9 leaders since independence in 1960. 3 were killed, 2 are in prison, and 1 in exile. The Africans.
Watch The Africans, Tuesday at 9 o'clock on Georgia Public Television.
My grandparents were born into slavery. They were not allowed to learn to read. My folks, too, never learned. They went to work instead of school. I promised them I'd be the first in the family to read. At 57, I finally kept that promise. Then Dr. King finished. Free at last, he said. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last.
You're never too old. It's never too late to learn to read. Call Plus.
Gum disease strikes 3 out of 4 people over age 35. 3 out of every 4. The major cause is plaque. Plaque forms in your mouth constantly. Left unchecked, it irritates, inflames, infects your gums, hardens into a gritty calculus, and can cause the loss of teeth. You can't see the effects of plaque. Your dentist can. Do see your American Dental Association dentist. Don't wait till it hurts.
Tonight, don't miss the Scottish influence from Ireland to Appalachia on The Story of English, tonight at 7 o'clock on Georgia Public Television.